And I'm Guy, and this is your home for everything Alberta independence. Let's get into it, Nat.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us today. Please don't forget to subscribe. It really helps us out. And also, when you like the video, it also helps us out. Oh, sorry. Thank you for jumping on the table. We try to read most, if not all, of your comments live. However, we do pause the whole show for super chats, and those help us out a lot as well. And we have memberships.
Absolutely. And there is a ton of breaking news today. We changed the thumbnail up a little bit today. We'll see if we stick with it tomorrow.
If it works. But I will start by saying hello to Todd. Hi, Todd. That says, just got a mini keyboard from Cool Stuff, using it now on my laptop. They're pretty fun to use, slows me down a bit, but...
Oh, absolutely fantastic. Good. I don't have a mini keyboard, but I have a little folding one.
You never use it.
I never use it. I have it in the other room, and I may start using it for edited videos.
And also hello to Steven Jensen. Thank you for being here. Says, got my truck back today. Wrong gas filler door. It's on its way, and a minor mirror adjuster not working right will be fixed when the parts get here. But at least you got it back. It's been a while now.
I know. It must feel good to at least have the truck back, even though it sounds like you're having the same issues we have here in Mexico. Every time you get something fixed in Mexico, it's just not quite right.
But something else breaks, right?
But it works.
Yes. And Silverfeet says, hi all, hello, and thank you for being here as well. So should we start?
Yeah, let's get into breaking news, I guess. Yes. And most of it's going to go around the USMCA because there was big news around that. And Doug Ford is just opening his fat mouth again.
Extra, extra, read all about it. Extra, extra, read all about it.
No, I can't see. My keyboard is connected. There we go. Having keyboard issues just like you, Todd. But let's start with, as you were mentioning, Doug Ford. Scott Robertson says, quote, we are an energy powerhouse and we could dismantle the U.S. if we wanted to. They need to feel the pain rather than us constantly feeling the pain.
Yeah, and this is absolutely ridiculous. Doug Ford started out with this statement early in the day talking about we're going to go to war with the United States, at least economically. We want to shut off the power. We know how he said that in the past. That would literally almost be an act of war if they did shut off the power. That being said, later on in the day, he did a series of interviews where he was just kissing ass. I don't know if he understands what side of the coin he wants to be on. He's trying to play elbows up with the Canadian audience and something completely different than the American audience. It reminds me of another politician in Canada, and that's a little bit like Mark Carney.
Mm-hmm. But let's see what he said.
I'm sorry, you go ahead.
This latest list,
yes.
What is the economic impact, the hit to Ontario, should this come into effect in 29 days? Have you quantified that? Can you articulate the impact?
What I understand, it's $28 billion across the country. Majority is going to be here in Ontario. That's why we can't roll over. We have to hit back. We have to, rather than be on our back heel, as I said, we have to go forward, take the offense. We are an energy powerhouse, and we could dismantle the U.S. if we wanted to, if we all work together. No matter if it's the electricity, and I'm not speaking for the other provinces, I'm going to be very clear. The potash, the oil, we're their #1 customer in the world. They need to feel the pain rather than us constantly feeling the pain.
And they're not the #1 customer in the world. Actually, Mexico is. And in comparing the relationship now, this is really a pivot point that we're seeing. Very often when the United States was putting tariffs on Canada, they were doing the same thing to Mexico. This is a convergence where it's just targeting Canada now, and it's targeting a very specific province, and that is Ontario, and that is Doug Ford's province. They're not targeting Alberta or the West. They actually want what the West needs. They're trying to make deals with the West, just like the Canadian federal government's trying to make deals with the West. There was a $13 billion investment coming in from an American company, Meta, as well as Trump approving multiple pipelines going directly to Alberta. Danielle Smith just needs to stand up and say, I want to be a partner with the U.S. Mark Carney is trying to kind of box those deals out, I think.
And also Canada continues to not be an energy powerhouse or as strong as it could be. And again, Alberta wants to get out because of the restrictions and all the impositions and the net zero CRAP that Mark Carney continues to try to impose.
Well, it's Saskatchewan, Alberta, and British Columbia that I think the United States would really want to partner up with if they could pick and choose their provinces. If they're going to hollow out the Canadian economy, they're going to really target Ontario businesses, I believe, because they don't want what Ontario has to offer. And Doug Ford is in a real tricky position right here. He can't do anything. This is all on Mark Carney, and Mark Carney doesn't seem to want to do a thing except have the controlled demolition of Canada at this point. I don't know if there's any other way to put it.
But then we also have another premier kind of flip-flopping back and forth as well. Eeyore. Scott Robertson says, quote, David Eby saying the United States is a huge market that is impossible for Canada to replace, but they were saying that it was very easy to replace a little bit ago. But at the end of the day, if they don't want Canadian goods, if they don't like Canada, then there's not a lot we can do about that. Oh, cry harder.
And we're going to see what Eby has to say here, but this is the stance liberal politicians and even conservative politicians that want to keep their elbows up like Doug Ford are saying. The thing is, we're going to see a clip in a moment from Fox News, and at the end of that clip, the newscaster just says, you're gathering countries around the world against the United States and you're trying to rally them to economically put pain on the U.S. What do you think is going to happen, Mark Carney? He doesn't seem to understand what Mark Carney's strategy is actually doing. America isn't as dumb as they think they are.
I'm not sure how the federal government reaches an agreement with an administration that, as far as I can tell, isn't talking to them. I don't see that the Americans have been engaging with Canada in trade conversations.
That's not true. It's Canada that continues to not go to all these trade conversations. Even the Mexican Federation said so.
Well, I just don't think David Eby got the memo, and that is there was massive leaks within Mexico saying the Canadians weren't showing up for the North America Free Trade Agreement on multiple occasions. Then it came out from multiple sources in the United States, and then Canada had to admit it when they were asked. I don't know if he got the memo because he's still trying to stick to the old line, because Canada was trying to say, oh, the other party, which is the U.S., isn't showing up to the table. And all along, it was Canada not showing up.
In any meaningful way. And so if the Americans come to the table to have a true discussion, I think that the federal government should absolutely be there. The Prime Minister and his team should be there. But if the Americans don't want to talk and they want to impose tariffs like this, then all of our energy should be going to other places. The United States is a huge market that is impossible for Canada to replace. But at the end of the day, if they don't want Canadian goods, if they don't like Canada, there's not a lot we can do about that. So let's focus our energy on the places that are really excited to trade with us and build up and take this generational opportunity so that our kids are not put in the same situation of being too dependent on the United States.
Well, and here's the thing. The United States absolutely does love what Western Canada has to offer, especially mining resources. They have $250 billion earmarked right now, primarily to roll into mining economies around the world. They want that to be Canada, but they need to solve a lot of the trade disputes they're having right now. Otherwise, Canada is going to have a lot of leverage over the United States, which they just don't want to engage in. They want to have good faith negotiations. Canada seems to be trying to protect their monopolies, these tariffs that they've tacked on for the last decade, quietly, that nobody really noticed until Trump kind of brought it up. And now Canada continues to try to deny they're having massive tariffs on the United States. We're talking about hundreds of percents of tariffs within dairy, within other sectors as well.
But it's also interesting to see that a lot of people, either Doug Ford or Eby here, or even Carney himself, continue to change the story. And it seems like they aren't now able to keep the memo that whatever, or as Eby didn't get the memo, to keep it whatever strategy they're having straight.
Well, it makes it even harder because I think they have these talking points going out. Oh, we want our elbows up. We want our elbows down, depending on what Carney's saying. But Carney is just like Doug Ford. He's giving two messages. He gives one message to the Canadian people, and then he gives another message to the Americans and to Donald Trump. And it's not like both parties can't see exactly what's going on. As long as you're a little bit politically engaged, you're going to see both of those statements, realizing they're contradicting. On top of that, Mark Carney, when he goes into the EU and other regions around the world, he gives yet another story to them. This isn't strong first principle politics. This is just trying to appease whoever's in front of you.
And again, as you mentioned, that clip from Fox and Friends saying,
and the interesting part about this clip is going to come right near the end, right before they cut the clip. So keep listening even after the main presentation there.
And today, President Trump is imposing a new 50% tariff on Canadian imports in retaliation for what he called unequal treatment of levies on U.S. cars, dairy, and alcohol. The new tariff covers a wide range of products from alcohol to hockey equipment and cement, and also includes all goods previously protected by the USMCA agreement. The Canadian Prime Minister responded to the move, saying in part, quote, Canada has made a series of detailed and comprehensive proposals to resolve this dispute. We stand ready to intensify those discussions in the coming weeks. And those are just a couple of your headlines, guys. guys.
All right, Ashley, thanks so much.
You're welcome. Ashley?
Attention to the Canadian Prime Minister, don't make yourself an enemy of the U.S. and try to rally countries against us and then wonder why you're getting tariffs. But I digress.
And today, President Trump...
And even the newscasters are saying at this point, it seems like the Canadians, the liberal Canadians with their elbows up are the only ones not realizing this, yet they're praising him for that Davos speech. And that Davos speech is exactly when he is trying to rally the world against the United States. Middle powers unite is the quote he wants to use. Well, middle powers unite is going to drive Canada off an economic cliff and possibly a cancellation of the USMCA. I'm guessing sometime after the midterms, and I've seen two other commentators now come around to that same opinion, saying it's a good chance Donald Trump pulls the carpet out from under Canada after the midterms, completely canceling the USMCA. It's a good chance. That's the timeline.
And again, interesting that Carney is saying, oh, we'll intensify the talks. Well, you've had a year to talk, a year where you said and got selected on the whole elbows up. I'm the negotiator. I'm the one that's going to be able to talk to Trump and to the U.S. And yet, number one, you haven't. And now that the pressure is getting a bit stronger, well, now you're saying, oh, we'll intensify the talks when you've had a year and a half almost.
Well, it's very interesting kind of what's going on here. Yesterday was the 20th of July, I believe, and Mexico just entered their third round of talks with the United States. Now, I'm expecting these talks to take a lot longer. You might have to have 5 or 6 rounds. Why? Because Mexico was coming to the table expecting Canada to be there. So everything they were negotiating was to renew that USMCA, and then they publicly started saying, we need Canada to show up, and Canada just wasn't showing up. I'm expecting this third round of talks with Mexico to start focusing in on a separate trade deal directly with the United States because Canada wasn't showing up.
But speaking of elbows up and that being a tactic, well, it seems it's being employed a little bit closer to home. Alberta Fact Check says, quote, Senator Paula Simmons says Albertans must get, quote unquote, elbows up to confront the independence movement. Good luck with that.
And it's just absolutely crazy. This elbows up thing has gone this far. It worked against Donald Trump. Now they're going to try to make it work against Alberta independence. And I'm seeing conservatives all over the place. And we're not just talking about conservative politicians. I'm seeing conservative commentators that I like having elbows up talking points, which is absolutely ridiculous at this point. They need to bring Alberta into the fold, listen to what their complaints are, and resolve those complaints. You need to open up the Constitution.
Or let Alberta gain its independence.
Yeah.
But it says fact check, Trudeau-appointed senator says Alberta independence supporters don't understand Alberta. So apparently all of you don't understand your own province or where you grew up and where you have legacies of your family having lived there for a very long time, generations.
They have nothing left. They have no facts left on their side. So now they're going to literally elbows up.
Mm-hmm. But now let's go back to your comments and then into Alberta Stay Free. Stephen Jensen says, lol, mine is bigger keyboard. Todd says, President Trump came into Davos fashionably late and laid the gauntlet down on Mark.
Yeah, I mean, he's been laying it down constantly, and he's going after these world banking organizations as well, and he's doing a lot of rearranging behind the scenes. They had a framework kind of worked out for the digital dollar to focus around the European Union, and all other digital dollars would flow into that. Donald Trump literally said no. Now, he's not been as public about his policies with digital currencies and things like that, but he's designing it to maximize freedom with the digital currency, but completely undermine CBDCs around the world.
Central bank digital.
Yeah. I think what he ultimately wants is a hard currency, a real currency like the US dollar, and then he wants a digital currency to complement that, basically.
Don Nadalik says, hello, NNG. Hello, says, and all else been a while, but now have some time to watch. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And Jim Roy, hello, says Trump needs to increase tariffs until Carney closes our borders, starts deporting, and kicks the CCP out. Maybe then Trump will open negotiations.
Yeah, and again, I'm not just pulling up after the midterms. I think that's when he's going to pull the rug out from under Canada and really go hard at them, really starting to tighten the screws. He's got the midterms coming up, and a lot of the northern states in the States will depend on the relationship with Canada. Not meaning he has to be really nice with them, but he can't cancel the deal deal right before the midterms. So I'm not expecting much. He'll slightly tighten the screws to kind of give Canada the warning. This is the time Trump is really going easy on Canada. They need to wake up because after the midterms, things aren't going to be so nice, especially if Trump wins. Trump's only 4 points, or the Republicans are 4 points behind. Typically on the last two midterms, they were 12 points behind and 10 points behind. The big difference this time, they're 4 points behind and they have $1 billion war chest. That thing has been building very quickly. The Democrats are next to zero right now. They're still negative when it comes to the DNC running so much money for the Kamala Harris campaign. Mm-hmm. They never paid that back at this point.
Goes to Vachan says, Paula should be instituted, and I don't mean the Senate. Well, elbows up. Let's see how far that gets her. Todd says, all I remember from Davos is President Trump's Donnelly speech and that other guy that said he thinks the U.S. should let Alberta build a pipeline to the Pacific. And yes, that was Scott Bessent, as Goes to Vachan says.
Yeah, and Scott Bessent is one of the people that are really rearranging the banking pieces for Trump and the administration right now to really push back on a global level. This is also a big piece of this is cutting off USAID funding. This is going to help in the midterms as well.
Because that was essentially the Democrats' war chest.
Oh, exactly.
That's how
and
they used it.
All the plans I think they had to really push back on Trump revolved around that war chest for USAID, and I think a lot of that money was supposed to flow into Canada, and attacks were supposed to come from Canada, economically. I'm talking about.
But now let's get a bit closer to home and go to Alberta Stay Free.
Free home Alberta, where the roots run deep and the money trees grow.
Let's start with this from, Corey Morgan that says, another one rises.
Yeah, and let's paint Alberta blue here with freedom. This is absolutely fantastic to see. And day after day, more flags are going up in Alberta.
Did they film it on a potato?
And fantastic to see. And if you're wondering why the signs are so big and why the flags are so high, it's because the signs are getting vandalized on a continuous basis here. Mm-hmm. And businesses that are supporting Alberta independence are also getting vandalized.
Yes.
I mean, we went over that in depth yesterday. And when the cops showed up to that particular business, they said, oh, no, it's coming from both sides here. There's not much we can do. This is absolutely ridiculous.
Yes, and Stephen Jensen, thank you so much for the $20 super chat, saying,
you.
written a new song celebrating the Saturday Telethon, podcasters, leading voices interviewed, and the ordinary warriors of the independence movement. Planning the video for one version now. We'll send a link when video songs get released. And we love to play your songs on the show, so please do so, and we will. And thank you so much.
Absolutely fantastic. And Stephen Jensen should be an inspiration for other people. When he first started making AI songs, he had never used AI songs before, and now his songs are truly good. I would say even when he first started, they were pretty okay, but now he's really refined them. So if you're thinking you want to do something with Alberta independence, make a post, make an AI song, just start doing it. You will get better over time. It's the same with us. If you watched a lot of our old videos, it was not as refined as it is now. We still have a long way to go, I think.
Yes, but let's go into next thing from Keith Wilson saying, quote, the status quo has a price and Albertans are paying for it every second. Billions leave Alberta while Ottawa imposes policies that weaken the very economy generating that wealth. This is never fair nor sustainable. See the cause for yourself at ottawatakes.com.
Yeah, and let's remember vote option 2. We want independence, or we want to get the process started. And we need to hold Danielle Smith feet to the fire after October 19th. On top of that, there was big news that kind of came out today. I didn't have a chance to grab the article, but they're going to start allowing mail-in balloting, which is a little bit concerning, but it's not mass mail-in balloting. I was watching the Fringe's video. He did a fantastic video about it. And it has been done before. So, I mean, all we can do is do our best. And I know a lot of people are saying, I'm going to vote the day of. This was also the strategy within the states. But what happened in the states, and specifically Arizona, a lot of the polling stations magically shut down for one reason or another. And people weren't able to make it to another polling station. So...
And we've also heard from some of our subscribers saying that they've tried to be volunteers for Election Alberta for the day of the voting, and that they're not getting back to them, which is also interesting.
And if you think you're going to be outside of Alberta, just do the mail-in balloting. I mean, there's no reason not to. It's better to make sure your vote's getting in there than no vote at all.
And again, this is from Keith Wilson and Tanya Clements' third-party advertiser, Let Alberta Decide. And yes, vote option 2 on October 19th, which is coming up as well.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that there was quite a lot of money raised during the telethon, not just for them, but for all the other TPAs.
Well, and now that mail-in voting is going to be a thing, because for a long time we didn't think it was going to be a thing in Alberta independence, and that was kind of the messaging I thought Danielle Smith was giving out. But now that there is mail-in balloting, we may have to do some work to figure out who's not going to be in Alberta that wants to vote for independence, things like this, because we don't want to lose any votes here. And if they try some shady business by having polling stations either shut down or having the polling stations hard to get to for rural voters, because rural voters typically have a much harder time getting to the polls than city voters do.
But also, speaking of Elections Alberta, Keith Wilson also reminds us to answer your phone if you did get contacted by Elections Alberta. Says, remember that if you don't answer or otherwise not cooperate when Elections Alberta calls you to verify your signature for the petition. And again, this is the petition when the signature gathering that was happening at the beginning of the year. Now Elections Alberta is verifying them, but they're doing it on a weighted scale. So essentially, they take a sample of one signature out of 700, and then if that one is not able to be verified, they say, oh, well, about 700 aren't able to be verified either. So it is important to answer. And as it says here, you could be disqualified, not only your signature, but 700 others. Please answer when they call and be cooperative, giving the exact address that you gave and you wrote down and the phone number that you gave as well.
Absolutely. And this is extremely important because we may have to use this path to get a binding referendum at some point. It's also crucially important because Keith Wilson keeps posting this. So if he's posting it as much as he is, I don't think I've seen him post something as much as a single message as this. So if you know you signed that petition, pick up your phone if they do call. Hopefully it will be labeled Elections Alberta, so you'll know who's calling.
But sometimes even if it is coming from a source like Elections Alberta, it doesn't say it on the phone, on the caller. So, but next, Western Standard says, quote, Michael Lloyd saying, no more hiding. Every MLA must take a public stand on Alberta independence.
Yeah, and I'm not so worried about them taking public stances, but what I will say is we need to make sure we're getting MLAs that support Alberta independence. Danielle Smith has already taken the stance that, and so has Pierre Poilievre, that politicians can't come out and support Alberta independence, otherwise they're not going to be part of the party, which is absolutely ridiculous. We do need to make sure when we do elect future MLAs, where and when we have a chance, we want people that do support Alberta independence. And ultimately, we want a leader in there that makes it okay to support Alberta independence or to have contradicting stances from the leadership. So we have a lot of independent thinkers within the UCP. Mm-hmm. And I always take the stance that if we really want that binding referendum in a short amount of time, within 6 to 12 months, we're going to have somebody that's going to push that non-binding referendum. I don't think Danielle Smith is that person.
And again, if she does have higher hopes within Ottawa and eventually leaving Alberta and maybe ousting not Pierre Poilievre, but maybe a Doug Ford, for example, or Jason Kenney, that are looking at that seat that they want to make Poilievre vacate, well, then she is going to be obviously more concerned about Alberta staying, because that is where the biggest base of the Conservative Party in general, the bigger Conservative Party, lies.
Well, it's primarily Doug Ford, Jason Kenney, and Doug Ford's campaign manager trying to oust Poilievre. Now, I don't know if they're going to be successful or not, but Poilievre might just throw a curveball in there, meaning if he knows he's going to step down, maybe he'll pick his replacement in a Danielle Smith or something like that and completely sidestep Doug Ford. One final kind of punch to the gut of Ford on the way out. Because I don't think Ford would be able to oust a Danielle Smith.
And lastly, this from Marty Up North says, quote, you're breaking the law, but welcome to Canada anyway. Let me help you with your bags. I'm guessing.
And this is a longer clip, but this is what's going on. And we have to realize there's all kinds of videos online right now about how Mark Carney has got immigration under control. No, he does not. He has cut down the number of PRs and dramatically increased the number of illegal immigrants coming into the country. We're talking 2 million people on refugee status into Canada every single year, over 500,000 per quarter. This is absolutely ridiculous. People like this coming illegally across the border, getting free money, free healthcare, free dental, free laundry service. These are how Mark Carney is replacing the level of immigrants coming into the country and not letting the Canadian public know about it.
Creative accounting, as we've seen with Mark Carney doing in other aspects as well.
At this point, you are in the United States of America. Does anybody have a valid visa currently for the United States, even if it expires soon?
Yes.
Yes. Are you aware that the very minute you cross this border, your status in the United States is nullified?
Yes.
Okay. Have you started a refugee claim in the United States?
No.
Pause
Is
it.
the reason why you have not?
And she asked, have you started a refugee claimant in the United States? Because the first country you come to is the country you're supposed to make a refugee claim at. It's very hard to get in Canada because the border, it's bordered with the United States, so you expect them to make the claim there. But America is making the same complaints, saying we have a remain in Mexico policy now, meaning you have to make the refugee claim actually in Mexico. This is a right to deny the claim right off the bat.
Not.
What?
Is there a reason why you're choosing not to do a refugee claim status in the United States, as opposed to traveling to Canada to do the very same thing?
Yeah, you must hear from us first.
Pardon?
Yes.
Do you know that there is a legal port not 3 kilometers from here where you can enter the country legally through the channels that are established? Yes? This is not a legal port of entry. This is an illegal point. This is not a way to go. Okay. Is the reason why you're choosing here as opposed to trying to go through the channels like everybody else that does?
No, we want to go through this one right here.
Okay, so you're aware that by crossing here, you're committing an illegal act?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you sure that you want the beginning of your life in Canada?
And it's kind of crazy saying this is not a legal port of entry. They should not be letting people in there, but they have an entire intake center there to get these people hooked up right into benefits right off the bat. And again, this is illegal. You have to claim asylum at the first country of entry. This is the same reason the UK and Ireland should not be having as many refugees as they do. It should be the first country they enter.
Future in Canada. That's why I'm here.
But you can start that same future in Canada at your own work.
Why? Because I want
to way.
Because I want to go to Canada because I believe I can make it. And this is how I can enter to Canada because I don't have a legal.
Do you have any family in Canada?
I don't have a family.
Do you have any family in
No.
Canada? Are you planning to claim refugee status in Canada?
Refugee? Yes, please.
Where are we coming from? Which countries?
Sorry?
Which countries?
Nigeria.
Okay. Are you aware that...
And again, they have an intake center there. And what was that shuttle van? I mean, this thing seems well organized. And when we looked into how a lot of the illegal migrants were getting to the United States under Joe Biden, there was an entire NGO network worth billions of dollars set up right here in Mexico. Ridiculous. This is a well-organized plot to absolutely flood Canada with migrants. We can continue on here because at the end, one migrant just rushes the gate, then they all rush the gate.
Should your refugee class status be refused through Immigration Canada, you will be returned not to the United States, but in fact to your home country of Nigeria.
I understand that.
Okay. So you may be refused that either way, correct? You're aware of that? The difference is, and I want to be clear though, the difference is if you're refused here, you're returned directly to Nigeria. However, since you have legal status in the United States, if you're refused there, you're returned to the United States.
No, I don't want to return back to the United States.
We want Canada here.
We want Canada here. We are staying in Canada.
Yeah.
I'm telling you that just because you come here doesn't mean you get to stay.
Yes,
We understand that.
We're clear. You understand what it is?
Yes.
We understand that.
And we believe in this.
Yes. Do you have any questions for me?
No, we just want to come in. That's it. No. Please.
For the fact that we believe in Canada, that Canada can solve our problem. That's why we are here.
We are saving
And we don't have any other choice to go back.
Our mind is made up. We want to come into Canada. Because we know Canada can save our life illegally. That's the way we're here right now. We understand everything you just said right now. And that is what we want right now. We want to come in
Are you
illegally.
starting to understand why it is that you want to start your lives in Canada by an illegal act, rather than doing what everybody else who also wants to start their life in Canada is doing illegally? Why is it that you think that you can supersede the system?
Okay.
Do it illegally while everybody else still is choosing to do it legally.
I don't want to go through it legally. I want to come in legally. Because right now I understand I'm illegal if I go through this court. That is right. And I want to just go. I want to follow my heart.
You're aware of what you're giving up when you come across.
Oh, yeah. Okay, we're done. I got to go.
Come on.
And again, they need to be claiming asylum at the first country that will accept them. And that would have been the United States in this case. And you have to figure that's a very small group as Trump has harder and harder immigration policies in the United States. A lot of people are going to be going up to the Canadian border because what's their choice at that point? It's either Mexico or Canada. And Canada is giving them tens of thousands of dollars a year just for being a refugee.
Yeah, last time we looked at it, it was $84,000 a year.
And on top of that, Trump, a lot of people don't know the policy that he actually has. ICE is having a little bit of success, but the majority of the success that is coming is the remigration policy, which means he gives $2,500 at an airport to any country that will accept them. Canada is one of those countries, so they can get a ticket back to their home country or to any country that will accept them, plus $2,500. So I'm expecting more and more people to claim refugee status within Canada, especially because Canada is accepting over 2 million a year, and this is with a population of only 40 million Canada has.
Mm-hmm. Now we'll go back to your comments and then into Alberta politics. Todd says, not coming from both sides, we don't have one incident. Well, they have many, all documented as well. Exactly, and that's the thing, and that's what will continue to be, I think, so enraging about the response from the police or Danielle Smith. It will always try to be, oh, well, it's both sides. Both sides have to behave. And it's very clear. It's one side that doesn't have any arguments left as to why Alberta should stay within Canada.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when Danielle Smith is asked directly about these incidents, she'll say something, but she'll never come out with a public statement just saying they need to stop the violence on the Federalist side there.
Mm-hmm. Stephen Jensen says, need a large, heavily stocked minefield along our entire border.
And it's one of the largest unprotected borders in the world. And that's the big thing. Ultimately, if the United States gets extremely hard on immigration, which they are getting harder and harder on immigration, these refugees are eventually just going to flow into Canada within the millions because millions of illegal migrants exist within the United States under the Biden administration.
Mm-hmm. And Jennifer Peterson asks, does anyone know where the number identifies as Elections Alberta? Sorry if it's already been posted. And again, we're not sure. And I haven't seen anybody that has already been contacted clarifying that aspect. But I've seen both when either government institutions call, it can either be a random number or it can have the name of who they are.
Yeah, somebody yesterday was saying when they called, it did say Elections Alberta, but there's no guarantee it's going to be labeled as Elections Alberta. So just pick up your phone if you are a supporter of Alberta independence right now. And I know it's tough because we recently got a Canadian phone number for different phone calls we had to make, and we are just getting flooded with
scam calls.
Scam calls, basically.
I forgot what those were like in English because we used to get them just in Spanish here.
And I also used to have a friend that actually moved to the Philippines, and he said there's just skyscrapers filled with these scam call centers, and the number one country that's often targeted is Canada because he owns a bar over there, so a lot of the scam callers actually come into his bar and he talks to them. He's like, oh yeah, we target Canada pretty often.
Is it because it's an older population?
Older, vulnerable population that has a lot of money. And there's very little repercussions on Canada's part if you do that to a citizen.
Great. Joseph Chan says, Danielle is done like dinner. Hopefully soon. Jennifer Peterson says, Rebel News had a video yesterday about a large encampment in Montreal. And I think it'll continue to escalate, again, as the U.S. continues to get harsher and harsher on their own side. Well, then if Canada is saying, well, we want to be nice and we want to be super open to everybody, then this is going to start being the result.
Yeah, it's just a sad state that it's the citizens that are suffering here and the government is actually benefiting from this, meaning the government's GDP goes up, but GDP per citizen goes way down every time an illegal migrant comes in. That means the quality of life for your normal citizens are going down, down, and down.
Ghost of a Chance says, where am I? Although Danielle has chosen her side, she had me fooled for decades. I think maybe she even fooled herself.
Yeah, but she still has Canadians fooled on a national level, and that's why I think if Poilievre does step down at some point, she's going to be on that short list. And if Doug Ford gets in there, I think she'll eventually oust Doug Ford. She has her sights set on Ottawa at this point, not to protect Alberta's sovereignty, I think.
And Stephen Jensen says it's supposed to come up as Elections Alberta. But again, we can't be 100% sure, and it's always better to be able to answer than them saying, oh, we can't verify this one signature, which means 700 get unverified.
Yeah.
Or can't be verified.
And when I talk about Danielle Smith not protecting sovereignty, it's primarily economic sovereignty at this point, but it's there also other forms of sovereignty. And a lot of people say, well, she's building pipelines. Yeah, that's exactly the method she's using to sign away the sovereignty. Where she thinks she can play to both sides because nobody's going to read the MOUs. Within those MOUs, she's having to pay carbon taxes on future pipelines, but also on past pipelines, and not just carbon taxes. There are a lot of things that are really signing away Alberta and Alberta citizens' sovereignty within those MOUs for those pipelines. The devil's in the details, really.
And Beulah Hillier, hello, says, hi everyone watching from Innisfail, Alberta. Thank you so much for being here. And Todd says, had me fooled till quite recently as well. Chan says,
she had all of us fooled because I was propping Danielle Smith up for a long time. I'm no longer doing that.
Chan says, Kenny was a chameleon, Danielle is a cracking chameleon. Many tentacles. Todd says, Corey's live at 7. Maybe he'll show the videos of the Unhinged Forever Canadian. I sent him LOL with heavy editing.
Yeah, it'd probably take a couple days, I'm thinking, especially if you send him quite a few videos.
Yes. But now let's go into Alberta politics.
He doesn't discuss federal politics. He only concerns himself with Alberta's independence.
And let's start with this from Mark Nixon saying, quote, leftist, I'm guessing, brain, I feel sorry for Americans. We're no longer friends. New tariffs on Canadian wine, unjustified. Will you put US back on the shelves? US booze back on the shelves? Not a chance. Who's unhinged?
Again, this is absolutely ridiculous because BC's major industry should be the mining industry, just like Alberta's major industry is the oil and natural gas industry. There's $250 billion earmarked for mining investments in the United States right now. They want to flow that into British Columbia. British Columbia needs to figure out with the federal government and Mark Carney how to really resolve these trade issues because massive amounts of money are ready to flow into British Columbia right now.
But now they're also willing to do the year plus more long consultations and to continue to bend the knee to those interests that are actually from themselves, so they can install their own things.
And the 30 by 30 program, it looks like it's really taking root in British Columbia. First, 11% of the province, David Eby is ready to give away to the federal government. And this is one of the golden triangles of BC, where it's the most valuable natural resource land, primarily mining minerals as well. So I guess this is another way to federalize natural resources. And this is maybe one of the reasons they want to keep out that $250 billion of American investment. They want to give the land over to the federal government first.
Our softwood is a national security risk to the United States, while Russian softwood is taking its place in the United States. I've heard about the proposed new tariffs from the United States. Obviously very disappointing, and it's going to have implications for Canadians, but I mean, mostly it's going to increase costs for Americans when they can least afford it. At this point, I just feel sorry for Americans. You know, if you're picking fights with Canadians, then you don't have a friend in the world. I've asked my staff to contact the ambassador to have our government statement in support of the historic friendship between Canada and the United States that's on the 250th birthday website of the United States and other materials to be removed. You know, we're still friends with Americans, but right now it's just hard to feel anything but sorry for the United States.
And we'll keep playing it, but you're not friends with Americans. You put your elbows up, ran an entire campaign on that. You're continuing to run on that. Donald Trump is the president of the United States. Because you don't like Donald Trump, you're demonizing all of America, and it's hurting you big time. Private property rights are also disappearing first in British Columbia. So what British Columbians need to worry about is primarily David Eby right here on the screen. He's not your friend. He's not going to do you any favors. If you own property, you're not going to own property by the time he's done with it.
And to hope that they turn a corner.
Will you put American booze back on the shelf?
Absolutely not.
Why not?
You know, I have to talk to forestry families that face a tariff of above 50% because our softwood is a national security risk to the United States, while Russian softwood is taking its place in the United States. I can't make sense of what the president is doing. Nobody can. If you're attacking Canadians, then really, I mean, ultimately, who is your friend in the world?
And again, it's just continuous victimhood. Canada is the country of the victimhood and the victim and the perpetual victim, not realizing or not wanting to realize or admit that it was you who started pressing and who started doing all of this initially as well.
Well, and he keeps saying they're buying Russian softwood, they're buying Russian lumber. Russian lumber is cheaper. That's why they're buying it. A good solution to this through David Eby would to deregulate certain contracts for logging to make massive 1,000-kilometer break lines for fires and then sell that wood at a reduced rate. That's how you would undercut the Russians. And this is what the free market is actually about. The person with the cheapest price is usually going to win.
Mm-hmm. But instead, let's complain and put our elbows up and say, oh, Americans used to be our friends, but now we're not friends anymore.
They're getting caught up in tariffs. And Canada especially is trying to protect their monopolies. And a lot of those monopolies lie in the East, Ottawa and Quebec. And I think the United States knows that. And that's why they're targeting those businesses. The Canadian government also knows that. That's why they're trying to box out American investment from coming into Alberta.
But also, honestly, it's a very childish argument and a very childish way of arguing, saying, oh, well, we're not going to get our way, so we're just going to go the whole way on the other. And that's what Carney's been doing ever since he got in. And he said he was this master negotiator. Once again, he's not.
Well,
he's gotten Canada to this point at this point.
Mexico never claimed to be a master negotiator. Nobody thinks they are. But man, compared to Canada right now, they are looking like master negotiators. They're on their third round of trade talks, and any negative repercussions that come in now don't come in on both countries like they were before. They're just targeted at Canada because Canada has the opposite strategy than what Mexico has had.
But next, Ryan Gertison says, quote, Janice Irwin shared this clip. The actual fascists want you to believe that they are the good guys, as always. And as the once great Robert Barnes used to say, confession through projection.
Well, and it says, F your fascist pancakes, and this goes to Danielle Smith flipping pancakes. Nobody is on Alberta independence side. Not Janice here, not Danielle Smith, not Mark Carney, not Pierre Poilievre, not Doug Ford. The politicians are lined up on one side, and the citizen-led decentralized movement of Alberta independence is the model of how to take your countries back, because these politicians are not listening to their citizens anymore. They didn't give them a say on mass immigration, and they're not giving them a say on any of these policies.
They're on private property. We're going to get copyrighted, but it's...
And again, this is just typical Mark Carney style stuff, just the smug liberal look on their face.
Because again, they have no arguments. If you had a good argument as to why Alberta should stay in Canada, be it economic, be it social, be it for the benefit of the young people and those that haven't been born yet, well, then make that one instead of saying, oh, fascist pancakes.
Well, the other politician was making it, and that was elbows up. They're literally saying elbows up against Alberta independence now.
Which doesn't work. But again, they don't have any good, that's why I say good, arguments against Alberta leaving. Jason Lee says, quote, this is Dane Lloyd MP. I ran against him in the last federal election. He did not show up to any debates. He ran on gun rights and did nothing. He helped shut down an event by supporting the removal of funding from a public venue, and it worked. He lied about it in an email and defamed me. Dane is turning his back on the 50,000 plus voters of one of the most grassroots ridings in Canada. In my honest opinion, he was chosen for this role because Parkland is the most vocal about sovereignty. Dane, are you interested in having a public debate? We're all waiting on a reason why Alberta. Again, we're still waiting on a reason why Alberta should stay. National Post says Poilievre appoints Edmonton MP to lead party's pro-unity campaign ahead of Alberta's separatism referendum.
Yeah, and I actually just coincidentally, right before we went on air, was watching an interview with him in his office of all places, and they had a nice Canadian flag behind him and an Albertan one. The Canadian flag had been there for a long time. The Albertan flag just got taken out of the box. All the fold lines, all the creases were brand new in that thing. He had not had an Alberta flag in his office before that point. So again, this is going to be an elbows up campaign coming from the Conservatives and the Liberals against Alberta independence. And none of these politicians are Alberta's friends. They want to take their sovereignty and they want to sell it away to the federal government for pipelines and nationalization of federal resources. Natural resources, sorry.
Yes. But now we'll go back to your comments and then into Alberta personalities. Ghost of a Chance says, no pipelines will be built, smoke and mirrors. And that's what we've been saying. There's also been a whole argument about, which the guy will probably come back and say that is not a good argument, but the whole no pipelines until Alberta is independent. But we've known that that was because they were debating on the fact that, oh, it's all about economics, it's all about Alberta not being able to have pipelines. Well, then let's try to solve that, or say we're going to solve it, not do anything, continue stalling, continue with the now extended consultation periods and the now extended and extensive restrictions upon the kinds of pipelines that could be built, again, the hypothetical ones, and retroactively also tax and impose even more restrictions on the pipelines that Alberta already has. So it's always been this argument of, oh, Alberta, it's the only issue and we can fix that easily, and now why are you complaining if we're solving the whole pipeline thing? Well, because it's not true and it's not real. And it is all smoke and mirrors. Sorry, I ran out of breath.
And maybe I'll just take a minute really quick. Next week, I think on Wednesdays, we're going to start a new podcast. We have a live podcast 6 days a week, 5 days a week, still Alberta independence, but the midterms are coming up in the United States, which are going to have a huge impact on the 2028 election. I don't expect the binding referendum to happen very quickly for Alberta independence like a lot of people do. I'm looking at what Mark Carney's saying. I'm looking at what Danielle Smith is saying, what Poilievre is saying. They're giving almost a 2-year timeline. If that's the case, and that's the worst case scenario, we need to really hope J.D. Vance gets into office there. So 1 day a week, we're going to focus on American politics, hopefully do our part to propel J.D. Vance into office, because I think he is the candidate that will recognize Alberta as an independent country. Mm-hmm. And why do I think he'll do that? He's the primary populist candidate. He's the only populist candidate that exists on the right-wing side right now. Even Marco Rubio, I think, is a lot less likely, but I think they're going to run together, and I hope J.D. Vance is the primary candidate.
Mm-hmm. Gustav Chan says, stop subsidizing the softwood, donkey. Yeah, exactly. And Gustav Chan also says, you're in hiding and you hold your meetings. They remind you of much these days. The politician that we talked about. Jennifer Peterson also says it's encouraging. Let me read it properly. It's encouraging to see many young people standing up for this movement. Honestly, thank you.
Yeah, and it's more and more every day. It started as much as an older movement. It's starting to get younger and younger, but when that binding referendum comes, that's going to be the shocker to the federal government, because when there's one vote that can change your entire destiny, your entire future for the place that you live, you're going to see massive amounts of young people come out in mass. You're also going to see Conservatives from across Canada begin to move to Alberta when they know it's a binding referendum, as well as people that left the country like us that are living all over the United States, all over Central America, South America, will start migrating back to Alberta to vote in that binding referendum to take Western culture and Western civilization back.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say something I forgot, but now let's go into Alberta personalities.
But they need to understand that Albertans are done, we're leaving, and there's no more conversation to be had. I know that's upsetting to people.
Let's start with this from Home with Homes. And if you haven't subscribed to their channel, Substack or X, please go subscribe to them as well. They're criminally undersubscribed. And we always say one of the big things and one of the important things is to have this base of independent media and independent journalists, content creators, even though they might have started small, to get them bigger and to be able to have them as the source of communication, but also to continue to push for independence itself.
Yeah, and the great thing is they're a lot younger and they are doing a lot of interviews with younger people. Mm-hmm. So.
Yes, it's the 4 hurdles to Alberta sovereignty, and this is with Tanya Clemens. There we go. From Let Alberta Decide.
Whole historical timeline of Alberta, everything that we had tried for generations to do, in effect, to create some sovereignty for ourselves within Canada, was turned down and was met with a no from Ottawa. And that's because to make significant constitutional change, you need to overcome 4 hurdles. And the first one is you need to have 7 out of 10 provinces representing more than 50% of the population in agreement. So unless you get Quebec or Ontario, because they share 60% of the population, unless you get one of them on board, it's never going to happen. And then after that, you'd have to get a majority vote in the House of Commons. And then after that, you'd have to get a majority vote in the Senate. And then even if you passed all 3 of those almost impossible hurdles, you still have the fact that Quebec basically has a de facto veto vote. So every time we had a referendum on equalization, or we had a firewall letter demanding change or anything like that, there was a reason why it was always met with a no, because it constitutionally can't happen.
Yeah, and the same way that we want to change the Constitution and there's all of these hurdles, this is why they wanted to give us a non-binding referendum and wait a year or more to that binding referendum. They're currently building mechanisms to make it extremely hard for anybody in the future to ever get a binding referendum on independence. And they want to continue to put hurdles in the way leading up to that binding referendum so we never actually get there. And it looks like Danielle Smith is going right along with it. She's saying she has to consult the federal government to see what percentage is actually a majority, which is absolutely ridiculous, and a slew of other things like a consultation. A consultation with First Nations is not supposed to happen until after a binding referendum if it's successful.
And again, this is an existential threat for the federal government, for Canada, and the way many Canadians see it. It is the existential threat that they have to do anything possible and anything in their power, and even not in their power, but giving themselves the power to stop. So it is existential in a good way for Albertans and the ability to have a new country, be able to continue with the values and to forge a new path. But for Canada, it's an existential threat because it is the province that has the most money, the most wealth, the most resources, and the most productive people as well.
Well, and it's an existential threat on a lot of levels because it gives the roadmap to other provinces and other citizens, which is important because a lot of other independence movements like the one in Quebec are run by politicians. A politician takes a backroom deal, you're never going to actually see it, but a decentralized citizen-led movement is the exact kind of movement the government fears the most.
Exactly. Sorry.
Because it can catch fire like a wildfire across Canada. You could see Saskatchewan go, the Northwest Territories, Yukon, Quebec. I mean, Canada could be completely balkanized, and it wouldn't be because of politicians. It would be because of the citizens who don't like the direction the federal government is taking the country.
And again, last time citizens stood up to fight for their own freedoms, well, we saw that the response was, emergency powers, War Measures Act, essentially, and stop them with anything that they have, or that they could have.
Okay, let's get into the next one here.
Hold on. I remember why I was stalling. Thank you so much, Teresa Freedom, for gifting 5 memberships as well. And you will be able to see your names coming up on the screen, everybody that got a membership from Teresa Freedom. So please thank Teresa Freedom for that. And again, I don't read the names out loud because I know some people have said they don't like me too. So thank you so much to Teresa Freedom for supporting us, but also for gifting 5 memberships. Please thank her, I'm going to assume. But next, Jasmine Lane says, let's be real, every angry comment you post is you admitting your party failed you. Because that's too humiliating to admit, the anger instead gets misdirected at America, as we continue to see with Abby and everybody else, Ford. If the Liberals had actually made Canada strong over the last decade plus, Canadians would be laughing at Truth Social status updates. We're not, because our economy has been in rough shape long before Trump's second term. And that's a very hard pill to swallow for a lot of people that don't want to admit that. It's easier to hate the orange man bad instead of actually facing the fact that your whole country is crumbling under your feet.
Well, yeah, and tomorrow we're going to have a couple clips from different Liberal supporters that were supporting Mark Carney, but now are just absolutely waking up. The one guy's saying Mark Carney is absolutely bending over for Donald Trump at this point, and we should be making no deals with the United States, which is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, they would rather drive the economy of Canada off a cliff than negotiate with Donald Trump.
Push it further off the cliff. It's already off the cliff.
I don't think that Liberals realize every single time they complain, they get irrationally unhinged in comment sections or brag about their canceled trips and boycotts, that they are actually admitting that the party they voted for completely failed them. Because at the end of the day, they aren't mad at Donald Trump. They're mad that Mark Carney did nothing. Strength laughs. It doesn't flinch. It doesn't boycott. It doesn't lose its mind in a comment section. They were not proving how much they love our country or how strong we are. They were proving how weak we became. And let's just cut to the chase. To everybody shocked and outraged over Donald Trump's newest announcement of 50% tariffs on Canada, let me remind you that the Prime Minister of this country spent a year posturing, performing, and virtue signaling instead of doing the one thing that would have actually given us strength. Instead of demanding results, you settled for words that made you feel validated. Instead of prioritizing domestic growth by eliminating the policies that weakened it, which predate Donald Trump even being elected, take a look at Statistics Canada instead of making Canada competitive. You were completely satisfied with elbows up and Facebook groups complaining about Donald Trump. perhaps most insulting, was witnessing the left in Canada clap like seals as the Prime
And again, going back to David Eby saying, oh, the Americans don't want to be our friend. Donald Trump doesn't want to be our friend. You spit in their face, and now you're wondering why they're coming back like this. And even with everything you've done against them with these monopolistic industries, they still want to invest primarily in Western Canada. They're done with Ottawa and the East. They don't want what they have to offer. A matter of fact, Canada has about 40 million people. That's a very small market. You let the Americans into that market, they may dominate that market, but you're also going to get tariff-free access to their market, which is almost 400 million people. It's a much bigger market, but the Canadian companies just can't compete because of the amount of regulations they have to exist under. So if they were to take down the tariffs, they would also have to take down the regulations, and the government absolutely doesn't want to do that.
Prime Minister traveled to Europe, to Beijing, to declare that the new world would be rebuilt out of their countries, not Canada. Then worst of all, you called everybody actually fighting for Canada's potential a maggot, a bootlicker, a far right, and a fascist. So please, spare me your faux patriotism and mean comments. I see right through you.
And again, it's the same tactic of National Socialism that is being employed by Mark Carney when he, for example, took over and took the Canadian flag from the Freedom Convoy and started saying that was his symbol and made it into his symbol, along with the campaign of, oh, we're Canada, we're strong, we're going to go against the U.S., I am the best negotiator. No, you're not.
Yeah, and the Democratic Socialists of America are on the rise in the United States, and Donald Trump is counteracting that by releasing massive amounts of CIA papers. He just released a treasure trove of the entire history of how they were kind of created and their links to Cuba and how they exist today. But there are a lot of links into Canada. When we start covering a little bit more American politics on Wednesday, I think we're going to start kind of pulling on those threads so people understand what's going on. And Trump definitely understands what's going on and the connections Canada has and how they're trying to turn the world against the United States.
And I think, unfortunately, and I mention it a lot because I continue to solidify this position I have about what is the matter, I guess, with most people that don't seem to see it. And I think it's because a lot of the people that just watch mainstream news and just complain and form these groups online and, oh, we're Canadians against Trump, we're never traveling to the US again, and ridiculous things like that, are living in a Canada from 30 years ago in little enclaves where they live outside in the suburbs. They don't have to go into the cities. They don't really have to notice what's going on with the country, so they can continue to live in that delusion and spit everything they do at movements and at people that actually speak about what they see and what is going on the ground and how terribly Canada has failed itself. But let's
kind of realize kind of what's going on here. Canada keeps wanting to have this elbows up stance and going at Trump very hard nosed. Mexico's taking the other approach and it's working. Who else is taking another approach? Somebody in Canada. Alberta is taking a different approach. Danielle Smith is completely taking a different approach. She's not completely aligning herself with the United States, but she is getting a ton of American investment coming in because she is playing nice with the Americans. So the strategy of playing nice works. The elbows up strategy obviously doesn't work. It's time to change your strategy.
But I was going to say, let's look at the other side of the coin, the one I'm kind of talking about. Juno News says, Robert 5 says, to be objective, Carney has had a remarkable year, and then complains about Polyev and being very nasty.
And again, they really want to oust Polyev at this point. And although Polyev doesn't support Alberta independence, and I'm not a big supporter of Polyev because of that, I still want the best for Canada. And he's the best leader you're going to get with inside a national Canada once Alberta does get its independence.
And I'll just add, that's saying something as well.
But you have to be objective. He's had a remarkable year, for sure. And when you have to contrast that with Pierre Poilievre. This was a guy who was going to win a massive majority government until Trudeau left. And he blew it. He blew it. He didn't reach out to Doug Ford, the Ontario Premier, which he should have done because he didn't think that Ford was right-wing enough. He didn't reach out to Tim Houston, who was a very popular progressive conservative premier in Nova Scotia, again, because he didn't think he was right-wing enough. He went after Jean Charest, who could have been a remarkably important election person for him in the province of Quebec. So he cut that off. he's done. So he lost the election campaign. He lost his own seat, and we thought maybe he was going. There were times where it looks like he was going to show a different side of his personality, a nicer side, to build bridges with more center-right conservatives. And he hasn't done that.
And he wants to build bridges, and he wants a softer personality, so he's more center-right. He wants to liberalize Pierre Poilievre so they can have an outward-facing uniparty. At least with Poilievre, it's behind the scenes. I think uniparty with cooperation here or there. They absolutely want a Doug Ford because they don't want anybody saying anything bad about Mark Carney right now. Mark Carney's poll numbers are dropping, and they're going to continue to drop because he can't negotiate, and it's becoming obvious.
But I will also say I think Pierre Poilievre, in a way, also lost because he took essentially the same stance Mark Carney did. I mean, his whole campaign was about also essentially elbows up, also going against Donald Trump, also not wanting to cooperate, and also infighting with essentially the entire Trump family. So a lot of his supporters, especially the younger ones, and I know this because I've seen them talking about this in interviews, he wasn't right-wing enough. He was essentially a Democrat in Canada saying that he's a conservative, like a U.S. Democrat in Canada saying he's a conservative, which is essentially what the whole Conservative Party in Canada is by now.
If Poilievre would have taken the other stance and said we need to befriend Donald Trump, it would have been unpopular. It may have even cost him the election, but right now he would be extremely popular because Mexico has taken that approach. It's succeeding. Danielle Smith took that approach, and it's succeeding for Alberta with bringing in American investment money. And he could say, if you put me into power, I have an approach that's working with other countries. It will work for Canada as well.
And again, in Mexico, it's because Sheinbaum and the president and her party are essentially being forced to cooperate, but we're seeing the benefits of that. I mean, yes, they're essentially under blackmail pressure from the U.S. saying, we know the kinds of dealings you've had with the bad people in your country, but it's working, and the trade negotiations are working, and Mexico's actually looking much better and coming out on top. Even Canadian commentators, I put it in my video, the last video I published, are saying Canada is not having any discussions yet. Mexico is on the third round now.
Yeah, me and Nat disagree on this a little bit. I don't think she obviously is being blackmailed behind the scenes for a even more, I think, cooperation. But overall, it's good for the country. I think she knows it's good for the country, and it's kind of working out now for her. So I think they don't really have to push too hard on her.
No, but she did start doing it through gritted teeth, and then she kind of did start cooperating properly. But let's go back to your comments and then into Alberta's Canada. Southern Gem Phil says, thank you to Teresa for the membership. And Sean says, what a buzz killer. Has he ever seen how he can eat an apple? Poilievre. Sean really likes that Poilievre apple clip.
Yeah.
Costa Chan says, existential because the golden goose is ready to fly and preserve any vestiges of a rotten dominion. And again, existential because it would also, when Alberta becomes independent, it will hold up that mirror to the rest of Canada and say, this is what happens when you are common sense and do common sense policies and follow freedom and follow actual true democracy. And then this is what Canada has. And in that way, it's also an existential threat.
Yeah, if they manage to oust Pierre Poilievre, Doug Ford is going to have the elbows up strategy because that's what he has now. But if Danielle Smith ousts Doug Ford, she has a different strategy. She's played nice with the Trump administration. She's played nice with the United States. She's got massive investment coming into Alberta. There's a good chance that she could be that voice of reason if she takes Pierre Poilievre's seat and says, we need to change the strategy. I had the right strategy in Alberta. And for a national level, I think that would really work. And a lot of people in Alberta just don't like her anymore, especially her own caucus. The independence movement understands that she's playing politics and she's not going to push for that binding referendum in a short amount of time. Again, she has her eyes on Ottawa.
But again, if she is able to get into that position in Ottawa and with a wider Canadian audience that like her more, I would say, she absolutely needs Alberta to stay, or at least Alberta and Quebec to stay so she continues to have the votes. Otherwise, there's no chance that she'll ever.
Well, and that's the problem. That's the problem as well. She absolutely knows the power of Alberta.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So.
Ghost Chan says he's brought in 49,000 Chinese EVs. What exactly is remarkable about that? About Mark Carney?
Well, he's not only brought in 49,000 Chinese EVs, he's tariffed U.S. automotive 22%. And he's not tariffing these other countries. So it's a disadvantage for the United States. It's against the USMCA, but they continue to do it anyway.
And Jennifer Peterson says, I believe it's more than that. Yeah. And the deals that he's made also with India, China, the ones we know about, the ones we don't know about, the ones that also kind of force his hand to not be so aligned with the U.S., even though China is now also aligned with the U.S. It's a whole mess.
Well, and then what are a lot of those deals based upon? A lot of them are based upon education. And why is that education thing always put in there? Student visas always put in there. It's based upon mass immigration, especially a lot of the deals he's pulling out of India, which aren't good to begin with, but he's selling out Canada's future through mass immigration to the Indians and to the Chinese.
Goes of a Chance says 5 has a conservative hemorrhoid. Yeah, dangling, ready to fall off. Goes of a Chance, sorry, that was a gross imagery. Goes of a Chance says conservatives, after decades now, will have to decide whether they're progressives or conservatives. But also, they have to notice and realize that the brand of conservatism that used to work globally, I will say, I hate using that word, but globally, is no longer the one that works. And it's happening exactly very similar here in Mexico, where conservatives think that, what was conservative a few years ago is still what's actually going to get you votes. It's not. And aligning so much towards the left and so much towards the progressives and those aspects, the ones that are already in power, isn't going to serve you. People want something completely different.
That's not going to work either. That's the problem. Canada lost the critical mass of conservatives it needs because it's been absolutely emptying out. And once Mark Carney got his majority government, any conservative that had the financial means was leaving the country at this point. Carney's poll numbers were going up for a long time, even though he was doing bad. It was because of the amount of conservatives absolutely leaving the country, just like us, and an amount of mass immigrants coming into the country being indoctrinated through mainstream media.
Yes, that caveat applies for Canada, yes. Todd says, brought in 49,000 cars full of spyware that explode, I will add. Again, I have a whole video about it because it happened here in Mexico, and then the U.S. said to Mexico, cut off their relations with China so we can actually have talks. And Mexico did that, and guess what? It actually went pretty well for Mexico. Well, Canada did the exact opposite. They started and they furthered their trade relations with China.
Well, China's been hollowing out the United States and their manufacturing for decades, but they did the exact same thing to Canada. And the United States finally had enough. And they said, we're going to get our manufacturing back. And other countries within the Western Hemisphere, which is our hemisphere, we're going to get China out of here. And Canada just does not want to get on board with this. It could be the golden age for the Western Hemisphere. Instead, it's Canada holding their nose, while the United States is succeeding. The last 10 months, they have had a growth in their economy.
Sean says 50% tariff. Trump is pissed. Doug Ford's antagonizing of Trump with his trip and his ads in the USA. We're going to have consequences. Carney's new world order cosplay is going to have a consequence.
This is very small potatoes, and it mainly focuses on Ottawa. But the big potatoes are going to be coming after the midterms, especially if Trump does well in the midterms, which I fully expect him to do. Canada has an opportunity now over the next 4 or 5 months to start coming to the table, getting those negotiations before that rug does get pulled out from under them.
Will they? Probably not. But speaking of Canada as a whole, let's actually go to Alberta's Canada.
I'm angry. I've had enough of these people.
And let's start with this from Ryan Gertison.
Oh, this was a crazy clip. I cannot believe he went there. This is ridiculous. We've talked about the forest fires in Canada for quite a bit, but the statement he's making here is ridiculous. I just want to say the solutions here are obvious to Trump. It's obvious to me, and it's obvious to a lot of people. Massive logging fire breaks. We're talking thousands of kilometers to minimize the amount of burns, especially in hot areas. On top of that, controlled burns. And on top of that, stop dumping glyphosate on your forests in mass in Canada and turning them to dry tinder. That's what you need to do. And the logging operations to cut the fire breaks could actually finance the entire thing.
Like it used to happen before when there was forest management.
But
it's not like we never knew about this. It's an ancestral practice.
Well, instead of actual solutions, which I'm suggesting here, Avi Lewis is going to say, oh, it's climate change. Blame it on the orange man.
Yeah, it's Trump. Brian Gertison says, quote, Avi Lewis was on CNN and unbelievably said Trump lit the fires in Ontario. He said he is ultimately responsible for them because of the cloud of CO2 that comes up from the U.S. Sure.
Wildfires are getting more and more devastating because they're being turbocharged by global warming. Global warming is being caused primarily by the burning of fossil fuels. If carbon dioxide was visible like smoke, you'd see the biggest single cloud in history that's drifted out of the United States. And that's the responsibility of...
And Trump pulled out of the Paris Climate...
China and India. I think their clouds would be a lot bigger. Sorry.
Trump pulled out of the Paris Climate Accords. Nobody met their targets in the Paris Climate Accords except for Trump once he pulled out. And how did he do it? Through natural gas. He massively cut back the United States emissions. And the fact that he gets no credit for that, and they say they're the most polluting country, it's just absolutely false. He's meeting targets and he's not even trying to meet targets.
And again, Africa, China, India, as he says, if you could see the clouds of CO2, theirs would be ginormous.
Big oil, headquartered in the United States and elsewhere. According to the Carbon Majors database, Exxon and Chevron are both in the top 5 greenhouse gas emitters of all time. Trump doesn't talk about that. After all, the fossil fuel industry contributed almost $100 million to his reelection campaign, $500 million spent by big oil in the last election cycle alone. If President Trump wants compensation for the harms that these fires are causing, how about an excess profit tax on big oil that made $30 million an hour in excess profits in the first month of the illegal war?
And that's communism in Canada. He represents the hard communist left within Canada. That being said, he normalizes all these ideas and then he makes them acceptable for Carney to pitch later on. And that's how you get these communist ideas embedding themselves, these socialist ideas embedding themselves in the mainstream within Canada. It's because you have a hard left communist party within Canada, but you don't have a far right party that will anchor Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives. There's nothing to anchor them, so they liberalize more and more every single year with their policies.
You want to keep watching?
Yeah.
The retard? Okay.
On Iran. I would like to express my condolences to the American people today. Your president is like an old man shaking his fist and screaming up at smoke from a fire that he is responsible for lighting or at least pouring gasoline onto.
You believe that the president of the United States has some responsibility over the situation that's unfolding now in Canada?
There's no question. It's not just doubling down on oil and gas, which unfortunately we're also doing in Canada under Mark Carney and driving the climate emergency even further. The president has gone all in, as our prime minister has, on AI and the data center revolution. And I want to make the connection to AI here because Trump has unleashed an AI arms race among the big tech companies. And he did it famously calling AI an electricity-eating monster, which he meant as a compliment. And the link between AI data centers, the need for massive amounts of new oil and gas is very, very clear here. I think the president has trouble on his hands because his electoral base hates AI data centers. Their electricity bills are going up. They're literally paying money to the companies. They're watching
okay, you can
their
leave
electricity
it there. It's climate change, AI, and the orange man. That's what's causing the forest fires in Canada, people.
Not forest mismanagement, because at the end of the day, it is beneficial to be able to see this every summer and continue to make policies upon that. But also, even the CNN guy is like, what is this retard saying? Because he said, so you think Trump is the one that started the fires, almost incredulously, because it's so ridiculous.
Well, also, I'm not a big fan of using water bombers. I think that's really reactionary. Again, I think cutting forest lines, having controlled burns, and stop dumping glyphosate on the forest. But if you do use AI, water bombers become extremely effective because you can have full satellite coverage on the entire country of Canada. And when a fire first breaks out, you can immediately send water bombers there to cut it off before it expands. So with AI, water bombers can be far more effective, but you have to get it early.
And it does seem like a lot of the Canadians are making their rounds over in U.S. news and even CNN. Kirk Lubimov says, quote, Ontario Premier Doug Ford is asking America to help now with the wildfires, even though I was just criticizing you, at the beginning of the show we played that.
And this clip was from yesterday. I grabbed it yesterday, and now he's talking about dollar for dollar tariffs. Let's cut off the electricity to the United States. Yesterday he was asking for help. I mean, this guy's head's in the clouds. He doesn't know which way's up, and he doesn't really know how to approach the United States because he has no real power, and his province is being targeted more than any other province because the United States doesn't need what Ontario has to offer. It needs what Saskatchewan, Alberta, and BC are offering. And again, they have $250 billion earmarked, ready to go into BC mining if BC would just deregulate and let them in.
And again, Doug Ford spent a whole essential campaign trying to campaign against the U.S.
I love the American people. I know they love Canadians, but not one asset, Not one offer from the president has come through to the prime minister or myself. We need support. We need help right now. I love the American people.
I thought you could manage it all on your own. Canada's great and can do everything by itself. As both him and the prime minister he's mentioning.
This happens every single year, and they don't want to fix the issues. And there's simple solutions here that would actually benefit Canada economically. Mass logging to make thousands of miles of forest breaks would contain these forest fires, and then you would make money off the logging operations.
But also, another one that responded to Trump is Carney himself, saying, quote, "My statement on the United States administration's intention to impose new tariffs on Canadian goods." Do you want me to read it all?
Yeah, I guess we'll read it all. Poilievre put out one as well. And again, it was a kind of an elbows up strategy coming from both sides. It's looking more and more like a uniparty, the way they want to address the United States. And as much as I don't like Danielle Smith within Alberta, because I don't think we're going to get a binding referendum in quick fashion, I think if she was in Poilievre's position, she could say, well, I took a different strategy with the U.S. and it benefited Alberta. We do not need an elbows up strategy. We need the opposite strategy, which Mexico is taking, which Alberta had taken before as well.
Carney starts. Today, the United States administration announced its intention to impose a new 50% tariff on a significant number of Canadian goods. This is the latest in a series of unilateral U.S. trade actions, because you don't sit and discuss and you don't go to the trade talks, that began with the U.S. imposing a series of tariffs in direct violation of the Canada-United States.
And Mexico, Canada has been breaking and violating the USMCA for a long, long time now, and nobody called it out until Trump got in office. Biden just let it slide.
Exactly. The free trade agreement between Canada, the United States, and Mexico. These include tariffs on the Canadian auto sector in violation of the USMCA. Canada, as its right, has merely matched those measures. No, because you had imposed them from before. More broadly, in response to these measures and threats, Canadian sovereignty, provinces, territories, and Canadians from coast to coast, I guess, have stood together, taking necessary actions to support our economy and defend our workers, farmers, businesses, and families. Recognizing that the U.S. has been transferring all of its trade relationships, including those covered under the USMCA, over the past 18 months, Canada has made a series of detailed and comprehensive proposals to resolve this dispute and to modernize the USMCA. We stand ready to intensify these discussions in the coming weeks. Why didn't you do it throughout the whole year that you said that you were going to? Canada believes in the benefits of free and fair trade, no, you don't, as evidenced by our new government signing more than 20 new economic security partnerships with China and India and every single other enemy of the people that live over here. This trade dispute has raised costs for families, particularly in the U.S. Canada stands ready to engage intensively and to address any outstanding issues with the U.S. to the mutual benefit of our citizens. In all circumstances, Canada will work relentlessly and will take any measures necessary to build our strength at home and to support Canadian workers.
Okay, and you can leave it there. And I'm saying there is a path for Danielle Smith to become Prime Minister of Canada, as much as I don't like it. Her path here would be, if Mark Carney doesn't follow through with these pipelines, she's already got a $13 billion investment from an American company in the AI data center with Meta. If she goes and builds 2 pipelines with Donald Trump in the United States, kind of bypassing the Canadian government there, and continues to play nice with the American administration, getting more and more investment flowing into Alberta, and Carney doesn't get a USMCA signed in the next 3 years, she can say, well, I'm running from Prime Minister and I have a different strategy that has worked in Alberta and I will implement the same strategy within Canada. However, and I think Liberals would vote for that, actually. And that's the thing.
She would need Alberta to be able to get this.
She's going to need a lot of things to line up for that. Mm-hmm. And she's going to have to push a binding referendum and just roll the dice and hope Alberta doesn't separate for that to happen if she wants that path to work out. There's a lot of stars that would have to align for her on this thing, but we'll see what happens.
Continue to cooperate with Carney.
No, continuing to cooperate with Carney would actually box her out from Prime Minister of Canada, because she would be selling out the future of Alberta through these MOUs, signing away Alberta's sovereignty, rather than taking an opposite strategy, saying, this is how I would govern differently.
But lastly, let's update the story on the knife-wielding gym goer.
Yeah, there was another update on this one. And we can just go right into him. He's going to explain it here.
Yes, I just want to say that's Dan Dix from Vancouver.
While Canadians are being told diversity is our strength, one religion just got permission to bring weapons into your local gym. You've probably seen the viral video out of Windsor, Ontario, where a Sikh man and TikTok influencer is working out at a Good Life Fitness with his Kirpan strapped to his body. By the way, notice all the top comments on his own post. You can pause this to see just how everyone feels about this. Would you feel comfortable working out to this guy openly carrying a blade? Most Canadians said no at a Good Life in Windsor. They kicked him out for wearing his Kirpan. Then they immediately apologized, allegedly fired the staff member, and then bent the knee. What the heck?
Okay, they did apologize, and it's alleged that they fired the staff member, and I'm waiting to see for confirmation of that. If they fired her, that's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, you can't have two sets of rules. I mean, Canada does it all the time, but...
What kind of workout is this anyways? This isn't inclusion. It's insanity. Another day, another example of how Canada's rapid transformation isn't some happy accident. It's engineered, and the average Canadian is getting steamrolled in the process. Check out Good Life's official response. At Good Life, we are committed to creating a safe, welcoming, and inclusive environment for everyone. The interaction shown in the video reflects a situation where our established practices were not applied as intended. We have reached out directly to the individual involved to address this matter. We comply with all applicable government legislation, including Canadian human rights laws. They reaffirm that Kirpans are welcome under Ontario's Human Rights Code. Of course they do, because this is the
Okay,
same
and you can leave it
chain
there.
that-
And I will say, there was incidents like this in the States as well. And what people did was boycott those gyms. I highly recommend boycotting those gyms. I just don't think Canadians have the backbone to do that.
And again, I think it just goes to the same point that I was saying. Most Canadians that are able to live far away from the big cities and far away from seeing what's actually happening on the ground will be maybe surprised that this is happening, and maybe one day they'll find someone wielding a knife in one of their gyms and say like, oh, when did this happen? How did this happen? But usually they don't have to interact with the big changes that have been happening across Canada.
Well, because the United States does have free speech and Donald Trump is really pushing that, so social media platforms have enough cover to allow free speech to happen online. You have national conversations that happen, so you don't get specialty groups and classes in the same way you do in Canada. But a lot of different conversations can happen within the context of the United States. In Canada, they want to shut down those conversations. So a lot of these things that are happening in society really causing fractures like specialty groups and classes or private property rights disappearing are really being shuttered online, and you're never having these conversations. And by the time people notice, it's too late.
But now we'll go back to your comments and then into Alberta and the world. Sean says they need to ban people from camping or hiking in the forest to stop these fires. Isn't that obvious? JK. It's funny, but they already tried that. And they weren't that successful either. Because they didn't ban everybody, they just banned the ones they don't like. Stephen Jensen says, if Canada doesn't change soon, we're effed. I would say Canada is effed already.
Yeah, we work.
It can change.
I mean, we work tirelessly for Alberta independence, and the reason we do is we've already left Canada. I already lost hope in Canada. My eyes are wide open. It's not too late for Alberta. It is too late for Canada. I know a lot of people in Alberta independence want to play nice and say, oh, we're Albertans and Canadians. You need to wake up. Canada is not what it was. It is gone. It is going to become a communist country. Canadians don't have a choice to vote if they want to become communist or not. Alberta does. Alberta can break free. Now is the chance. And I will work tirelessly to see this thing through to the end.
And also the few that did essentially kind of already vote for their own independence left. And millions are leaving Canada. But in the droves, essentially. Yeah. And from every single province, and usually very productive, very entrepreneurial, the people that don't see a future within Canada, and younger people too. I mean, we've seen those videos at universities when Continental asks people, well, if someone in the US offered you a job, they all say, well, I would leave tomorrow.
Well, millions are leaving Canada. Millions of conservatives are leaving Canada. The government doesn't care because that secures their voting bloc, and they have millions to replace them with people with refugee status. Over 2 million people on refugee status somehow are coming into Canada. I don't know how this is being because the oceans that are lining their borders are massive. Primarily, they're coming in from the United States.
Mm-hmm. Sean says, Avi is what far too many Canadians believe, anti-fossil fuels, crazy, stupid accusations. How does that look for Alberta's future? Alberta must have independence or it will be a third world country alongside with the rest of Canada.
Yeah, now's the time to stand up. October 19th is your opportunity to voice that you no longer think Canada is headed in the right direction. Send Ottawa a message.
Vote option 2. Stephen Jensen says this guy is a psychotic climate zealot goof. Yes. All correct. Todd says...
and he's got Trump derangement syndrome on top of that.
Yes. And Todd says Avi Lewis must be stopped, talks like a psychopath in my books. I mean, they all do. Because again, if you want communism, that's psychopathy.
Well, he plays a very strategic role in Canadian politics, and the Liberals know it. He normalizes all these ideas. So when Carney finally does pitch it, it's already in the ether there.
Mm-hmm. Southern Gem Phil says, good grief, too much CNN Clinton News Network already. The guy is the one that chooses the clips. Todd said, and I'm guessing also because most Canadian politicians will only go on CNN.
Yeah.
They would never go on Fox. Well, I mean, Ford tried, but
Doug Ford
failed.
did.
But failed. Todd says, hi, I can comment from my kitchen, boiling corn on the cob and rice, fry up some hamburger. Oh, I'm hungry
fantastic.
now. I'm hungry. Todd says, with my mini keyboard. I'm glad you're happy with your keyboard, Todd. Sean says Carney is throwing away its largest and greatest asset, being access to the United States markets, and tying himself to unstable, selfish Europeans and communist Chinese. And Indians as well.
Yeah, but he also needs the economy to continue to retract and collapse so he can federalize not just natural resources, but all big industries within Canada. He's going to have the federal government come and offer loans for percentages of these companies for their survival. And that's how you get communism from a capitalist country. They got the game plan worked out. But if he renegotiates the USMCA and is successful at that, that's going to prevent him from actually bringing in that plan.
Sean says, do they have to wear the knife in the shower too? I mean, imagine slipping, because that would solve a few issues. Sean says, and this
it just doesn't make sense. When they go to prison, do they get to bring it with them as well?
Do they get to have their turban? Because again, they make you, maybe they search you every day. I don't know. Sean says, and this dude is obviously doesn't genuinely care. He is a content creator and trying to get clicks. People need to be smarter at telling these narcissistic fools. And very similar to what I said yesterday about discipline with that crazy blue-haired person that was screaming and she pronouns. It's because of the lack of discipline, not just for children and young adults and teenagers, but for the whole of society. There is no social fabric anymore in Canada. There is no social capital because all our social capital doesn't understand each other.
Yeah. Let's go into...
and also use the Kirpan to murder Henry Novak.
Let's go into Alberta Alberta and the World if we can.
Yes, and then I'll continue reading your comments. Where am I? There. Oh, I left the comment up. I'm sorry. I'm just gonna, there. Okay. Let's start with, otherwise you can't see what we're gonna be seeing. Let's start with Robbie Starbucks. Oh God. Saying Nicaragua's socialist president, Daniel Ortega, he's insane. I'm surprised he hasn't died yet. He's very sick. Has just announced an end to presidential elections. He's going to do this to stop popular right-wing opposition from coming to power, as is happening in the rest of Latin America. And again, he already lost all of his friends to this wave of right-wing popular opposition elsewhere in Latin America.
Yeah, he's stopping.
Mexico.
Yeah, he's stopping elections within Nicaragua. I actually was recently researching Nicaragua. People fear his wife more than they actually fear him, and they're scared that he's going to die and his wife's going to take over because she's even more authoritarian than he is. He's absolutely banned all Bibles in the country completely.
And books.
Canada's going down the same track with banning Bible verses. I would not be surprised. God knows Canada is headed in this direction right now. Now, are they going to stop elections right away? No. But are they getting rid of any opposition that would vote against them and then bringing in mass immigration to replace that population? Yes.
And again, he's one of the few left from the Forum of Sao Paulo, which used to be Maduro himself, he's insane. Castro, well, initially Castro in Cuba, but then AMLO here in Mexico and in Brazil with, I always forget his name. because I hate him.
Yeah, I usually recommend El Salvador if people are looking for another country to move to in Central or South America, because he's managed to turn the country around so dramatically. Do not move to Nicaragua, whatever you
No.
do. A lot of people just don't know, and they sometimes pick a country.
Yeah, but they're insane over there. He's insane. The people are not.
Oh, no, you don't need to play.
I mean, I could translate it, but that would take forever because he speaks slowly and he's barely intelligible. It's not just you. But next, Andrew Scheer says Carney's record in the last few weeks tells the UAE he doesn't have anything
And
to
you can
invest.
leave it there. Andrew Scheer will kind of explain it to us, and he's doing a fantastic job pointing out the $70 billion Mark Carney turned away, but he should be going a step further and talk about the $250 billion the Americans have earmarked for mining operations, and they would prefer that to be within British Columbia. They're literally turning away hundreds of billions of dollars of investment right now. Why? Because they want to nationalize the natural resource sector as well as other major sectors within Canada.
I don't want to throw too many flowers to Andrew, but
Another boneheaded move by Mark Carney. The United Arab Emirates came to Canada with $70 billion, knocked on the door of Mark Carney's government, said, where can we put this money to work? And Mark Carney said, nowhere. You see, a year ago, Mark Carney wrote a new law for himself to give his own government the power to ignore a whole bunch of laws. He said that this was necessary to get things built. Rather than just repeal bad liberal laws that caused the problem in the first place, he wrote himself brand new powers and then created the Major Projects Office. This was a new bureaucracy that he promised would get things built at unimaginable speeds.
Once a project has been designated as being in the national interest, a new federal Major Project Office will bring together all the relevant federal departments and agencies to provide a single set of conditions that must be met for the project to move forward.
So, when the UAE came with their $70 billion looking to invest in Canada, to create jobs, to get things built, Mark Carney said no. His office literally told the officials from the UAE that there was nothing ready to invest in. Let me read you some quotes. The PM keeps talking about the $70 billion UAE commitment he secured on his first visit in November. None of that has been deployed. That's from a Canadian official. The article goes on, but after Carney hosted a UAE Canada Business Council meeting in Ottawa in mid-June, the Major Projects Office turned away members from the Emirati delegation who were seeking investment opportunities, the official said, and here's the key point. The reason was a lack of projects at a stage where they could deploy the money. This is such a devastating gut punch to the Canadians who voted for Mark Carney, expecting him to get things done quickly. Remember, he was the one in the last election
you
who
can
said he
leave
had...
it there, and it looks like a controlled demolition of the country, and he wants control of the natural resource sector to fund the new ideal of globalism. They have no way to fund it at this point. They were funding it through USAID and other money laundering schemes. I think the new money laundering scheme is going to be the federalization of the natural resource sector within Canada.
And again, if Canada has control in a very communist way of those natural resources through the federal means, well, then it's very convenient for example, the European Union to get further into bed with Canada because they're running out of money too, and they're not seeing Russia being very effective anymore.
Well, you're also having to realize they're going to funnel that money once the federal government has control of it out into globalist pockets. And they do this through third-party organizations like NATO, things like that. And Canada signs these contracts. So a lot of that money will automatically go there.
And again, thanks to, in part, the UN, a lot of British Columbians are now hanging by a thread on whether they have private property rights or not. So, lastly, Muriga Meme says, we lead the world in gender studies.
Yeah, and this is Lucky Palmer. He's kind of revolutionizing the military-industrial complex in the United States. The United States used to make very high-cost missiles. We're talking millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars per missile. He's doing it for literally thousands of dollars with 14 parts and 7 tools can put it together so we can actually compete with China, or the United States can actually compete with China. But he's absolutely right about this, and he used to manufacture a lot of things within China, so he knows manufacturing very well. When he used to manufacture within China, it was for virtual reality headsets, which he's also kind of bringing into this new military-industrial complex, which the United States really needs a complete overhaul because it's a complete monopoly right now.
I used to make millions of virtual reality headsets in China. I've been to Shenzhen a bunch of times. If you want to get stuff done and you want to build things, it is the place to be. And they don't get 50% more for their dollar. They get like 10x for their dollar. Things that here would take you $1 million, You do there for $50,000, $100,000, like a development program. Labor is not even the cheap thing. A lot of people, that's an outdated concept. They think of China's just having really cheap labor. They automate most of these things. They automate most of the labor-intensive production. Their people are just genuinely extremely good. They have the world's best battery engineers. They have many of the world's best metallurgists, many of the world's best optical engineers. American companies have been hollowed out because our companies and our degrees, which feed these companies, because the companies feed these colleges a whole bill of goods on what they should be teaching people. Basically, we're not teaching engineers how to be engineers anymore. We're not teaching designers how to actually design things to be manufactured. We're teaching them how to be high-level design shops that put together design packages that get sent to the real engineers in China, and they actually figure out how to do the work. This is true even with our mechanical engineering programs, even with our electrical engineering programs. People are turning into architecture astronauts. They pick components and they put them in a nominal layout, but the real work of how am I actually going to put this together? How am I going to build a manufacturing line to make this thing? How am I going to need to figure out how to do the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different revisions of this board to pass radio emissions and interference standards? That's all done in China. So they are the real engineers. We've hollowed out our real engineering capacity. And like, I don't want to put down Apple too much. Apple used to have to figure out how to actually make their stuff. These days, most of the really hard work is being done by Chinese engineers.
I just want to bear down on this because you're making what strikes me as a fascinating point here. All your points are fascinating. But what you're saying is you cannot divorce innovation from the act of manufacturing. If you make the stuff, that's where the innovation takes place.
The act of manufacturing your feedstocks as well. You need to make, if you don't control your raw materials, if you are dependent on your largest strategic adversary for everything that underpins your quality of life, you are fundamentally not in control of your own destiny. And if you would have written our current situation in a Cold War novel, imagine when Reagan was still in office. Imagine if there had been a novel comes out, like a Tom Clancy novel, and he says, in just 20 years, all of the Pentagon's most secure command and control terminals, information displays, and every other electronic device will be made by the Soviet Union under Kremlin supervision, and we're going to buy them by the millions. It would have been unthinkable. It wouldn't have even been believable as fiction.
And you can leave it there. And if you haven't seen interviews with Lucky Palmer, it's pretty fascinating. And he has revolutionized the military-industrial complex within the United States. But also, I've been talking a lot about lately, the Ukraine getting so much credit with having the most advanced drones in the world. And the big scandal that's come out, even in liberal magazines now, is they traced where the drones were actually coming from. They originally came from China, went to the Philippines, from the Philippines and Thailand. They went into the EU. The EU put all the components together and installed American software and then shipped it over to Ukraine. And Ukraine put a freaking sticker on them and saying made in Ukraine, and now is getting massive investments. We need to wake up to where these things are actually being made and the holes within the current globalist system.
And also where a lot of Chinese innovation actually comes from stealing.
Yeah. Well, not just stealing. They're literally sending massive amounts of people to U.S. schools, and they're actually having those people take the hard courses, become the real careers, not
gender studies majors.
Gender studies or whatever it is.
But also taking. I mean, a lot of Chinese students have been discovered to be spies.
Yeah.
And they have been deported recently as well. Okay, Todd says, without tax, LOL. Sean says he is pulling what the Ukrainian president did. I still don't understand why Gavin Newsom is running for president when a year ago he said there wouldn't be a 2028 presidential election.
Yeah, I was listening to a fascinating debate last night about who would be the candidate. It wasn't a debate. It was more of a discussion amongst conservatives of who would be the candidate for 2028. And they all agreed Gavin Newsom was the most likely. But when the name Bernie Sanders came up, I'm really convinced Bernie Sanders would have the best chance. It's going to be very interesting. Now, Bernie Sanders got two big things going against him. Number one, he's sold out. And number two, he's very old. But I mean, J.D. Vance is going to have points against him too. He's highly connected to Palantir, and Marco Rubio is a traditional neocon, and he has massive ties there. It's going to be very interesting. But Bernie Sanders, a lot of people don't know, but he is the leader of the DSA. That's the Democratic Socialists of America. I don't want to see it happen, but they're going to have to, because the conservatives are going to come with J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio, two strong candidates that on their own could be president. Bernie Sanders by himself isn't going to be enough. AOC is not going to be the running mate. I think maybe they if they can figure it out, who would actually be the president and who would be the vice president, they might try to combine a Bernie Sanders with a Gavin Newsom.
But Bernie Sanders at this point is essentially the crypt keeper.
Yeah, but he's got a lot going for him because he's
We've
got
already
all the
seen-
connections. He stepped down out of the way for Biden. He's the one candidate that has his money into all the financing as well, so he could actually finance a major campaign as well.
Sean says, well, I guess that confirmed the pipelines were just pipe dreams. Exactly, always have been, I would say. Sean says the design in California but made in China was a lie. It's all designed and made in China, hence Apple's last 10 years lack of innovation.
Yeah, and Trump's been putting a lot of pressure on Apple to kind of get out of there, but we need to follow it up with another president like a J.D. Vance who's going to continue what Trump has kind of laid the foundation for. If we don't get that, everything Trump has done over the last couple of years, which is absolutely amazing, he hasn't been frozen out like he was in his first term. He's actually made major strides, especially against the globalists, but we need to follow that up with at least 4 more years because that's going to cement a lot of that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Rage Against the Machine says China. Yeah. Sean says it's going to be Rubio versus Sanders in 2028.
Yeah, the elites within the Conservative Party want Rubio, but I think it's going to be J.D. Vance's to take. Him and Rubio are actually really good friends. They make a good pairing for president, vice president as well. Sanders, it's going to be interesting. He's going to need a good running mate to have any kind of chance, so he's going to need a heavy hitter. Typically, you have your president, and then you have a no-name for the vice president. It doesn't look like that's what's going to be happening this time around.
Goes of a Chance says, how could one be possibly so daft? And many of the things we showed are applicable to that. Blue Sky Gladu says, Carney is consolidating power, making it so we are not investable. Government buys contracts. Soon all rights are out the window. Communism.
Yeah.
Socialism first, which then turns
Well, and you also have to realize what happens within a presidential election. It's not the entire country that decides who's going to be president. Most states already either vote red or they vote blue, and you know who they're voting for. There are 7 swing states. Those 7 swing states decide the presidential election every year.
Goes of a Chance says, Daniel's only path is as a libero. And Goes of a Chance as well says, ask Henry Novak, exactly, about the Kurpan.
Yeah.
If you don't remember that story, look it up. Dozdes says Ryan Matta is in El Salvador. Who's Ryan Matta? Okay. The Truth says, what the hell is going on here? Alberta independence. Yes. It says, I left high school in 2002, expelled for challenging the school for changing our shop classes to gender classes. Well, I'm glad you tried to do that.
Well, remember when they had that shop teacher in Ottawa? That was crazy.
Yes. Southern Gem Phil says, Rubio is better than Sanders. Sure, Republican win. But I don't know if it's better than JD.
Sorry, repeat that?
Rubio is better than Sanders. Sure, Republican win, but I would say I'm not better than JD.
Yeah, I think JD has he's the populist there, and he's the one that's going to recognize Alberta as an independent country. Rubio is a traditional neocon. Now he's disguised himself under MAGA and kind of rebirthed himself, but he still has all those neocon connections. I would expect him to still be a traditional neocon. And in a neocon point of view, they may not want to recognize Alberta as an independent country. That's why we want JD as president, or at least that's why I do. And I think there's going to be a huge power struggle once JD and Rubio actually get in there, because the neocons will have a lot of say. If JD wants to get anything done, he's going to have to do it through Rubio, because Rubio's actually the one with all the connections. JD's connections are to money and to Silicon Valley.
And lastly, Sean says JD Vance is not going to run at all. Just my opinion.
I think he's going to run, and I think he'll make a good candidate. But also, I think he's going to, if he's not willing to cooperate with what Rubio is telling him from behind the scenes, they're going to look to move him out of the way in the same way they try to move Trump out of the way 3 times now.
True. But now we're heading over to RUMBLE because there's a few spicier stories that YouTube doesn't like us to talk about on here. So you can follow us there. But before you do, please don't forget to subscribe. Again, it really does help us out. There's a 30-second wait screen, and then we'll see you over there.
Let's get ready to